Welcome to the Healing Journey with your host, Dr. Kate Olin. Join us for another episode where we create a safe space to engage in a vulnerable discussion that pertains to all aspects of healing. And now your host, Dr. Kate Olin.
Welcome back to the Healing Journey, a safe space to engage in vulnerable discussion. Today, we're talking about a rare and devastating condition known as Creutzfeldt-Jakob Disease, or CJD. This is a deeply personal episode to me, one that was in my heart at the very onset of my podcasting journey. So, I want to warn you that today's interview was one of my very first recorded interviews, and I say this because I must not have known how to properly set up my recording system. I'm not happy with the sound quality from my end, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I think that this conversation is an important one, especially if you are listening and you are looking for inspiration or logistical advice for how to navigate your own grief or your own journey with hospice care. And I do believe that my executive producer, Jake Seabach, has worked his magic once again to improve the sound quality of my early blunders. So, big shout out to Jake of Aligned Power Coaching. Jake isn't just my producer, but he's also my professional coach. And I can tell you that without him, I would not be meeting some of my professional goals right now, and I'm not sure that this podcast product would be coming to fruition at all. So, thanks, Jake, for all the support and the graceful way that you challenge me to achieve my zone of genius, which is a term that he has coined, and I am adopting it. I love that phrase. But before we dive into the interviews of this two-part series, interviews with two people who have been directly affected, I want to give you some background to help us all understand what this disease is and why it's so unique. CJD belongs to a group of illnesses called prion diseases. A prion, or some people pronounce it prion. Prion it's not a virus or a bacteria, which is more commonly a condition that we're used to, but it's actually a misfolded protein. Now, normally proteins in the brain fold into precise shapes to do their jobs. But when a prion is present, it causes other proteins around it to misfold, almost like a domino effect. And over time, these misfolded proteins clump together, damaging brain cells and creating sponge-like holes in brain tissue. This idea of misfolded proteins isn't unique to CJD. In fact, other neurological diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Huntington's disease, they also involve harmful protein misfolding. What sets prion diseases apart, though, is how rapidly they progress and how destructive they are to the brain. There are several types of CJD. Some cases are genetic, which is passed down through mutations in the prion protein gene. This is the most rare form of CJD. Others are sporadic, meaning that they appear without a clear cause, and this is actually the most common type of CJD. And in very rare cases, especially here in the United States, I don't think there is an exposure case, but CJD can be acquired through exposure, such as contaminated medical instruments or, historically, through infected food. I personally was touched by the contamination aspect of this disease back in the early 2000s. At that time, I was studying abroad in Spain, right in the middle of a mad cow's disease outbreak in Europe, which we discussed in Spain as vaca loca disease, crazy cow disease. You've probably heard of mad cow before. It's the animal version of prion disease. and CJD is the human form. For the 4 months I lived in Spain, I avoided beef altogether out of fear of exposure. And after today's episode, I think you'll understand why I was so cautious. And one of the things that's been hard for me over the years is I've heard some jokes about mad cow disease. And even in my hometown, there's a business called Mad Cow Tree Removal. Now, I've reached out to them on social media to share how insensitive I find that name. And the last time I tried to contact them again before this episode, I saw that I was blocked from their social media. So, I don't know, I wanted to have a constructive discussion with them, hopeful that they might reflect more deeply on the pain this disease causes, especially now that I'm trying to raise public awareness. So you might be wondering why I chose to dedicate these episodes to CJD, and truth be told, a few years ago, I had a front row seat to what happens to a person and their family when they're faced with this disease. It was heartbreaking because CJD is so rare, even medical professionals are often unprepared for the rapid and complex neurological decline it causes. In fact, it's often not diagnosed until after death when a brain autopsy can confirm it. Families are left overwhelmed, frightened, and full of questions because they don't know what they're dealing with. They want to know, is this contagious, what they can expect, and how long they'll have to be caring for their loved one. For me, everything shifted when my dear lifelong friend, who was already fighting her own battle with cancer, suddenly had to care for her mom, who fell gravely ill with CJD. It was all hands on deck, and I was determined to support the woman who had been such a formative figure in my life. The progression was shockingly fast. In just 5 weeks, she went from being what we thought was completely healthy and independent, although in retrospect, I see signs that maybe she had been dealing with this on her own before it became noticeable to her loved ones. And then she went to needing reminders for the simplest tasks, to requiring around-the-clock assistance for basic care, and finally, to a comatose state in her last few days. Watching her disappear so quickly was devastating. It was physically exhausting, emotionally taxing, and deeply traumatic for everyone who loved her. The wounds of that experience are still being processed more than 2 years later. Now, as we move into today's conversation, keep in mind that while CJD is extremely rare, its impact on individuals and families is profound. Our guests will share their stories of navigating this disease, offering us a chance to understand not only the science, but also the human experience behind it. I'm glad to report that there is hope, more hope now than there was just 5 years ago. In part because one, quote, victim of this disease has dedicated her entire career to finding a cure before her symptoms set in. You won't want to miss this intriguing and inspirational story in part 2 of Healing from CJD. But before we dive in, I would like to tell you about our sponsor, Thrive Everywhere. When I started the business, Thrive Everywhere, my vision was to create a space where people could feel more confident navigating the healthcare system while also taking ownership of their health and wellness. What began as a platform to empower private practice clinicians, those who have the freedom to care for patients without the limits of corporate system, it's grown into a resource for anyone looking for the right provider for their unique needs. With our patented search filters, finding care is simple. You can find search by services, diagnosis, or the specialty services that you're looking for to connect with the clinician who's right for you. For healthcare providers, Thrive Everywhere makes it easy to create a profile so you can spend less time on logistics and more time caring for your clients So, whether you're a clinician ready to build your private practice or someone looking for a provider who truly understands you, we're here to support your healing journey. Our website, thriveeverywhere.com, should be going live sometime later this month, January of 2026. We hope you check us out and just know we are just getting started and really excited to grow as we gain more interest and support. So if it calls, please visit thriveeverywhere.com. Happy healing. All right, so today we are speaking to my new friend, Adam Baus. He is someone who I met at the CJD conference last summer. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have you. I'm really grateful to have you. And I know that this conversation is not an easy one, and I want to honor the courage it takes to share such a personal story. Your wife's passing earlier this year from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, I know, was a devastating loss, not just for you and your kids, but for the community of people who loved her as well. So this is a space where we want to both remember her as the person she was, but also help others understand what it's like to face this disease as a family. So please, we're inviting you to share only what feels right. With that, I want to start by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about your wife, about who she was, what she did in this life, and what you want mostly for people to remember about her.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It feels like a soft opening, so I really appreciate that. And
Right.
I think the place I would start is just to say that my wife Stacy was an amazing human. And I've learned that even more since she's been gone. Just the stories and the connections from other people, and there's a terrible beauty to that of knowing her. And we were married for 19 years. We knew each other for a little over 20, and still there was so much I didn't know about her, and there's still so much I was learning, and more that I'm continuing to learn. We met on a blind date. So like that's a thing apparently still.
Yeah.
We met on a blind date, and then a month afterwards, she moved to Colorado for the summer. We live in Indiana. She moved to Colorado for the summer, and maybe we were the last couple ever to write like physical letters to each other, because she was kind of remote in the Rocky Mountains and didn't. It was 2004. We didn't have smartphones. Cell phone service was terrible. So we literally wrote letters, handwritten letters back and forth to each other all summer long before she came back towards the end of August. We were married for 19 years, like I said. Three boys. Today, their ages are 17, 14, and 11. Stacy loved numbers. She was a math nerd. She was the first one to tell you that, with an incredible memory for birth dates and anniversaries and things like that. So I've been having to write a lot more down all of a sudden, because I can't just go to her to get the, hey, when is this person's birthday? Or noticing particular dates. I think recently there was a date that was like all square root numbers. It was like 9/16/25, and she would have just delighted in that. She worked in banks, she worked in finance, she worked in accounting, those kinds of things, which makes sense given her love for numbers. And maybe, for now, we'll keep talking about her, obviously, but maybe the last thing I'll mention here is that she was a runner, a pretty dedicated and devoted runner, and something that a lot of people were just amazed by. Her regular routine was to get up at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, which I never understood. Um, but even just about 10 days before she noticed one of the early symptoms of this disease, she finished her fifth marathon. And so pretty amazing to know that there was stuff probably going on in her mind and in her body already. Maybe she was fully aware of it. Maybe she was partly curious, but maybe she had no awareness of it. But she was still there at the Air Force marathon, running in the 90-degree heat, finishing her fifth marathon, which was just an incredible accomplishment. But made it even all the more sweet knowing, what the rest of the year ended up looking like for her and for us.
Yeah. So approximately when was that marathon you said?
It was in September of last year, 2024.
So in September.
Yeah.
And she ran a marathon in September, and you said she noticed her first symptoms. Can we walk through that process just a little bit? What was it that she noticed?
Yeah, there have been a couple things going on. So obviously we have teenagers, right? So that's exhausting in and of itself.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And then working full time. So working mom, teenagers. She's training for this marathon through the summer heat. And then she was also studying and taking exams to become a certified financial planner. So that was
Oh my.
all going on at the exact same time, which is a lot for anyone.
Yes.
But she had endurance and she had a high sense of responsibility. And when she committed to something, she was going to follow through with it. So she did the marathon towards the end of September. A week later, she passed her final exam to become a certified financial planner. And then we were going to go on vacation. And she was exhausted and she had been experiencing some fatigue and some restlessness and difficulty with sleep, which were abnormal things, but not crazy. She's also, at the time, she was 45. And so starting to ask questions about perimenopause and menopause and what's going on with my body and all these different changes. And so there was just a lot of stuff going on, but it was all sort of dismissible. And I don't mean to dismiss it, but like explainable. That's a better word. It was explainable.
Yeah, everything you mentioned sounds like what I'm going through in my perimenopause journey. So that's a whole episode though. But yeah, so I could see so what is going on? Is this like my normal aging? Or is there something else going on? So
that's right. So we went on a vacation. We had a vacation plan for fall break. We went with my dad and stepmom. We went on a vacation. We thought, okay, this is going to be perfectly timed. Like all this big, heavy stuff that you're working on is going to be over. We can go away for a week. We can do a reset. We're going to be out on the ocean. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be wonderful. The day we got off of the cruise ship and we were on the airplane, she turned to me and she said, "Hey, my fingers feel kind of tingly and a little bit swollen. Does my hand look swollen to you?" And she was using her left hand. She was left-handed.
Mhm.
And honestly, it didn't look it looked like a hand. It didn't look puffy. It didn't look anything like that. But I was like, maybe a little bit. Like I didn't want to make her think that she was making something up. But she said, yeah, my hand just feels funny, feels tingly and a little bit swollen. And that was really, looking back, that's the first time that I think she was really acknowledging, hey, there's something going on that doesn't necessarily make sense. And I can't really explain it away. I can't just say, oh, this is because I'm tired. A tingling, swollen hand, that feels a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. So from there, how did we decide to find more assessment?
Yeah. She wasn't less tired after the vacation. She was still really tired. And, as I look back and, in all honesty, I've documented all of this. Like I've gone back and I've looked at text messages and I've replayed conversations and like I've got my spreadsheets and in the moment I was doing that anyway. Just because. But looking back over the course of October, there were no like huge glaring red sirens going off, but there was a progressive increase in, hey, this isn't getting better or going away. It's actually like starting to show up in different ways. I remember by the end of October, we had gone for a hike in the woods and she was just kind of, she was present, but she seemed a little bit out of it more than I ever knew her to be. And we went for the hike and we enjoyed it. And it was a nice fall day. We got back in the van and we were driving home and she fell asleep, which again, not crazy abnormal, but like she was tired and so she fell asleep. And while she was sleeping, I was just kind of observing her because I've got this anxiety in my head of what's going on with my wife and her body and is there anything I should be paying attention to? And as she was asleep, her left arm was moving involuntarily. There were these sudden jerks and this kind of clenched hand, almost looking like a claw. And for a number of reasons that maybe I won't fully go into here, I at this point I knew that this was going to be CJD. I knew that this was going to be a brain disease. I knew that this was going to be a progression of symptoms like this. And going from a tingling, maybe swollen feeling hand on October 10th. By the end of October, she's got this arm, and it's not a conscious thing. It happened while she was sleeping, but like there was just enough of it there that I was like, oh man, this is progressing. It's not going to go away. We can't explain this away because it's perimenopause or because it's fatigue or because it's stress or anxiety. Like there's something there's something neurological going on, and I have a pretty good sense of it being CJD.
Yeah. And that's scary to think, right? I feel like, you were well versed in the disease. You knew some of the symptoms. How did you guys proceed? Did you call the doctor? Did you go to the hospital?
She had an appointment with her general practitioner, annual checkup. So she actually asked me to go with her, which is not a normal practice. That is not a thing I have regularly done with my wife.
Mhm.
And that told me that she had a lot of fear. She had a lot of anxiety for her to ask me to come with her. So I went with her, and I'm really glad I did, because whether it was self-protection, whether it was discomfort, whether I don't know why, but she was pretty okay with the doctor saying, yeah, this sounds like a lot of like anxiety. This could be just some extreme fatigue. It could be perimenopause kicking in. The appointment was about to end, and I had just been an observer to this point. And I said, hey, I think there's one more thing we need to consider. I think we
Mhm.
need to look at neurology. I think we really need to consider the potential that this could be CJD.
Mhm.
And the doctor was like, I've heard of it, but I don't actually know what it is. I mean, like, I don't know how it presents. I don't know the course of it. I know that it's a brain disease, but let me go talk to the sort of my senior doctor who's in the office and see what she would recommend. And he left and came back a few minutes later. He's like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just put in a consult for a neurologist, just out of an abundance of caution. And that was kind of it.
Yeah.
Had I not been there, I don't know that would have happened.
Had you not been there and had you not been educated on this disease?
Exactly. There's a lot of people, right, who would be in that situation
Yes.
and who would just be like, I don't even know what the right thing to ask for is. I don't know how to advocate. I want to advocate for myself, for my spouse, but like, I just don't know. I don't even know. But I was fortunate enough to know not only to advocate
Mhm.
on behalf of Stacy, but also to like push in a specific direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had that background knowledge and you advocated. And I mean, just to, I think from a medical professional who often has to help people navigate and figure out what's going on within their body, I think everything he said sounds pretty typical. That's probably most typically what would be walking through his door,
Sure.
because this is a very atypical
Yeah.
disease and very rare
Yeah.
and very rare. But at the conference, you and I met hundreds of people who were affected by this
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
at that conference, I feel like they did a great job educating us as non-medical professionals. I mean, I am in the medical field and I totally thought I would be able to hang with the science, but I certainly had to kind of step back and
Yeah.
take it in and process it um, more than I expected, because it is complex.
Yeah.
But because it's such a rare disease, the onus is on the people who are affected by it to know what to look for and know what to ask your doctor for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the general public is used to going to the doctor to get the answers.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to go to the doctor and ask the right questions to get the right care. Like you said, you have to advocate for your
Yeah.
wife. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right.
So that was in the end of October, I think. And then
Yeah.
how long did it take before you guys could get into neuro? Yeah.
Way too long, as you can
Mhm.
imagine. Long story short, we didn't end up seeing the neurologist until December 3rd.
Wow.
It took about 5 weeks for us to actually be able to get in. And again, not without a lack of advocacy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Weekly calls, sometimes multiple times a week. Are there any new openings? Are we still on the radar? Hey, things are continuing to progress. I think I know what this is. Can we please, please, please just get in and see you?
Mhm.
And they were like, there's not a whole lot we can do. Like we've got a full load of clients. And again, even for a neurologist, and this, we happen to know a neurologist who was familiar with CJD, who had seen patients with CJD before. It's a fraction of his practice, right? Most of his
Mhm.
most of his patients are dealing with things like Alzheimer's, where the progression is still terrible and still horrifying, but not anywhere near as rapid as CJD can be. So my sense of urgency and my impatience was like, no, I understand that you have a full load of clients, but you're going to continue to see those clients for years to come. My wife probably has 3 to 6 months. Can we please just see you so we can confirm what this is?
So during that time, I mean, what was happening with your logistical life? Was she trying to work up until what point? How did you
Yeah.
decide how did you make those choices? It's so disorienting to have such rapid change so fast in such a young person who has so many responsibilities.
Yeah. And I mean, just again, to reinforce, she ran a marathon at the end of September.
Yeah.
And by mid-November, she was no longer able to drive. So she had always hated night driving. I think there's a lot of people who hate night driving because of vision issues or just like the darkness and challenges. But we had gotten to a point where I was like, yeah, you definitely can't drive at night. And there was even a point in early November where I even asked her, I said, hey, like if your left hand continues to feel, and it continued to feel numb, it continued to feel tingly, it's swollen, her grip strength was starting to disappear in her left hand, which is her dominant hand. And at one point I said, hey, like, what's your confidence level in like just in driving? Like, do you feel like you're in control? And her drive to work was a 10-minute drive from where we live on the edge of the city into downtown. So not like long and not rigorous, but still you're driving a car. And she said, oh, about 40%. And I said, well, what do you mean 40%? She goes, I feel like there's a 40% chance I'm going to crash every time I drive.
Oh.
Which is not good.
No.
That's concerning. And especially because she's driving, at that time, she was driving our youngest to school on her way to work and things like that. And so I did start taking the kids. She was still driving. She still wanted to drive, but I started taking kids to school and doing all of that. We'd always shared that, but I was like, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and take on this. It's less stress for you. You can be focused on the road if you really feel like you want to continue to drive. She was still going to work. And then the day where it all just kind of hit the fan was November 14th. I was at home. I work from home. I'm a coach. I was starting up a group coaching session and my phone rang. And it was Stacy, which is abnormal. She would usually just text. She didn't usually call, but I just kind of silenced it. Because, I'm starting a coaching session. Like
you're at work, you're focused. I understand the investment in your own personal business. Like, listen, I get it. You were like, oh, yeah, I'll talk to her in a minute. I got to work.
Yeah.
I gotta work.
Yeah. Actually, before I even go into this particular day, there was a day that happened 4 days before this. It was the Sunday before this Thursday on November 14th. I had decided to reinvigorate my acting career. So I was cast in a production of A Christmas Carol at the Civic Theater. And I was really excited about it. Had been in, rehearsals all through October and into November. But she was becoming less and less confident in her ability to do things around the house. And like I said, the driving was concerning. And so I said to her, hey, I'm thinking about dropping out of the play just so I can be here to be more helpful. And she's like, gosh, that feels rash. Like, I don't want you to do that. And I was like, okay, well, like, just know that it's on my mind. I went to rehearsal on that Sunday night. I came home and she said, I could tell she was visibly shaken. And she said, I had an episode. I had something happened where I just felt my whole body just shaking for like 30 seconds. And she was crying as she's telling me this. And I was like, okay, decision made. I'm done with the show. I'm done with not being with you as much as I possibly can. Not because I had a set. I knew what was happening. I knew that where this was going to end. But even in that moment, it wasn't a decision of, oh, I need to be with you because I only have so much time with you. It was more of, I need to be with you because I want you to be safe and I want you to feel supported. So that was on Sunday. Come Thursday, coaching session, first phone call, I ignore it. She calls again a minute later, and I was like, okay, sorry, everybody. I've got to take this call. I'm going to put you on mute, turn my camera off. I pick it up, and I said, hey, what's up? And it wasn't Stacy. It was someone else. And she said, hey, I'm with Stacy. We're here at the soup kitchen. She was volunteering over her lunch break, which she had been doing for years. But I didn't know she was still doing that because of her health and because of the extra driving and all these things. And they said, we really feel like she needs to go to the doctor. One of the people here volunteering with her is a nurse. We really think she needs to go to the emergency room. And in my head, I'm going, well, yeah, like I've seen the progression happening day over day. I know that things are not good, but like, are you seeing her from like 2 months ago to now and you're startled? Or like, is there really something happening that I need to be alarmed about? And I was like, okay, I'll hop in my car and I'll drive over there. And I was mad the whole time because I was like, Stacy, why are you out volunteering? Why are you at the soup kitchen? Why? I'm not even sure why you're at work, but like, why are you're just not doing well physically. Why are you out trying to do extra stuff? And it's just at the core of who she was. She volunteered, she gave, she was a servant. I got there. I had never been to the soup kitchen before. It took me a couple minutes, like in different buildings, trying to find where she was. Then I finally found her. They were in the basement. She was helping to make box mix cakes, and she's sitting in a chair, and she's kind of got a smile on her face, but there's still just tears coming down her face. And the two other women that were there with her were just so gentle and so kind. They said, "Hey, Stacy explained to us everything that's been going on for the last month or so. She was making this mix and like just lost control. Like her hands just kind of stopped working, and she dropped the box into the batter. And then just like seemed really disoriented, didn't know where she was. And so like we thought we need to call Adam and we need to get you to a hospital. So we went to the ER. We went to the ER, and again, it's the same situation as with the general practitioner of, hey, I think I know what this is. I think you should do what you need to do to confirm or rule this out. And we were there for 8 hours.
Wow.
They did an MRI. And this is maybe a little bit of a side note about the blessing and curse of medical technology these days. Stacy went out to get her MRI. I waited in the room. I'm texting friends. I'm having people pick up the kids. I'm looping in her brother who lives in Denver. Like I'm just trying to like let the inner circle know what's going on and how they can support us. And Stacy comes back from the MRI. She's laying in the bed. We're waiting. I'm paying attention to my phone because I'm getting all these text messages and I'm communicating with people. And then I get an email that pops up, and it's the results of the MRI because it's all connected to the digital chart keeping system. So I got the results on my phone, and I knew the results before the doctor ever came in.
Wow. What did it say? What did the report say?
It said it was indicative of CJD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, again, that
Wow.
wasn't surprising to me. That wasn't really news to me. It was confirmation.
Yeah.
But again, I can't imagine if I was someone who was completely blindsided, had no history, no understanding of what was going on, like just the horror of getting that in your email before the doctor even came in to give an explanation. Now, again, an ER doctor doesn't have the job of coming in and giving someone that kind of awful news very often. And so maybe it's my codependency, but like I was like, hey man, it's okay. I get it.
You were
I
consoling
understand.
the physician.
I
Of
know.
course
It was
you were.
ridiculous. But he came
But
in
you
and
know
he
what?
said,
Props to him for being so caring, though, that
sure.
it was so, because listen, I do think that it's easy for the general public to think, oh, it's a doctor's job. The doctors see people die, doctors give bed.
Sure.
It's their job. You know, certain jobs come with certain typical responsibilities, and this was a little atypical for him, and it sounds like he was distraught having to give you such news.
Yeah, and they get, he consulted with a neurologist that was on call, and they came in, he came in and he was like, listen, there's not a whole lot that I can do for you right now. And I explained that we're waiting for a neurologist appointment and all these different things. And ultimately he was like, is there anything I can do for you? Like whatever you need, like just let me know. And we were like, well, like, I don't know. Like, is there some sort of medication that can help her just have a good night's rest? Basically, basically something to help with sleep, right?
Yeah.
And he, gave us a prescription, and that was that. Like 10:30 at night on Thursday, November 14th, we walked out of the hospital. I walked out of the hospital. Stacy wasn't, walking normally. Over the course of early November, we saw her handwriting change. We saw her walking become a little bit stilted and awkward. Her balance, she needed a handrail to go up and down stairs. Like all of this happened. She got to this point, this November 14th. All of that happened in 6 weeks, from her saying my hand feels a little tingly to I can't really walk far distances. I can't write my name anymore. My vision's getting blurry. Like all of these changes, just this domino effect of what was going on in her brain with the misfolding prions. Yeah, it all just happened. And so November 14th becomes the sort of tipping point where we can now tell people. She didn't like telling people. She didn't want people to know that she had It's not that she didn't want people to know. It's that she wanted like actual confirmation, because with an MRI, they go, yeah, it kind of looks like what we would expect to see with CJD, but CJD can't be diagnosed purely from an MRI. You need specific tests, right? And really, the only way they will truly 100% say it is after an autopsy with looking at the brain and things like that. But we had requested a test for blood test to confirm and see if that it was there. We ended up getting that sometime in mid-December. We had the neurology appointment, largely unhelpful because
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, it sounds like this is probably what it is. I'll give you something for the hand tremors and the jerking, the myoclonus that's starting to kick in. But again, through the whole thing, it's like we're only going to be able to get what we need if we're advocating for it, and if we know what to ask for and what kind of questions to ask. But it's all, I mean, in some ways it's a blur, and sometimes it feels like it lasted 10 years. But from August 10th to January 1st, we had 84 days. 84 days of going, yeah, I think I know what this is. I think she has CJD, and we're going to lose her soon.
So that is a devastating diagnosis. Was there any comfort in getting knowledge, though?
No, there was no comfort in it because pretty early I was confident I knew what it was, and so I can imagine other people in the circumstance that have never heard of this, and we heard these stories at the conference too, right? People have never heard of the disease, don't know what's going on. They just see these sudden rapid changes, and they're like, "Is this fixable? Is this something that can be treated?" Well, I didn't have any illusions of that.
Mhm.
And there were times throughout, and I don't blame anyone for their response and their grappling with this, but there were times when people would say, "Is there anything we can do to slow this down?" And by the point that people knew and they were asking that question, I was like, but why would I want to slow it down? Like, of course, I don't want to lose my wife.
You don't want
But
her to
like,
suffer.
but this is awful for her and for all of us. So like, I don't actually want to hit pause. I don't want to slow this down. I don't want it to be over, but I also don't want this to last any longer than it has to for anybody. And again, we've got 3 kids
Yeah.
who at the time, 10, 13, and 16. Um, that's not something you want them to have to endure any longer than they have to as well. They have to endure this now for the rest of their lives, but in the midst of it, watching that progression, I think that was one of the things that was really unexpected for me, even though I did know a lot, was that sometimes with other diseases, there's the experience of maybe somebody with cancer who goes, some days you have a good day, sometimes you have a bad day. Well, with CJD, in our experience, there was it never got better the next day. There was never a day of relief. It was always today's a little bit worse. And eventually it got to a point where it was like, okay, whatever today's experience is, we're probably gonna have that experience for 3 days. And then we're going to have a new set of challenges and a new set of problems and a new set of constraints. And just every 3 days, every 3 days, every 3 days, just a continued decline, a continued slide into just losing functionality of primarily physical for Stacy. She didn't have a lot of um, what you would consider to be more traditional dementia related symptoms. She didn't really lose sense of place. She didn't really lose sense of recognizing people. I know that can be something that a lot of people with CJD experience, but whether it's related to age or luck or whatever, up until about a week, before she was gone, she was still able to listen and recognize people and communicate in limited ways. But yeah, it's just a slow decline, a fast decline, but a slow decline at the same time.
It feels because, I've had the experience of watching someone I know and love go through it. And when you're in it, every day feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
But also when I look back on that time, it feels like it went by so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it really messes with your sense of time 100%.
Yeah. So how did hospice get involved? Did you have to ask for that, or did the neurologist offer it? How did that process go?
Yeah, so I'm 43 and I had no idea how hospice worked in any way, shape, or form. Um, I was instantly relieved to find out that if you have decent insurance, it's 100% covered, so there's no cost for it. That's incredible. For all the things that are broken about the healthcare system in the United States, that is one thing that I am grateful for.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to some friends, I said, like, I don't know when we're supposed to start hospice. I was hoping the neurologist would tell us that, but he was just kind of like, well, here's a social worker you can talk to. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll talk to her. That's great. But she was in Indianapolis. We're about 45 minutes to an hour away. And she's like, well, I don't really know the Muncie area. I'm not sure like what recommendations I can make, but like, here are some things to consider. I remember saying to a couple of friends, like, is there like a Yelp for hospice? Like, how do you pick? Like, are there reviews? Like, is there a menu of, like, I don't know how this works. So I talked to a couple of the social workers that were available to me through different hospital networks. They gave me good recommendations. And essentially they said, listen, you can call in hospice whenever you want if it's CJD, because it's not going to last. It's not going to last long. There's no treatment. There's no cure. You will qualify for it. So whenever you feel ready. And I was like, well, I feel ready, but I don't know that Stacy feels ready, because it's not just my decision. She's still conscious. She's still making decisions, even at that point in mid-November when we had, the day, November 14th, she was still moving around and deciding what she wanted to eat. And she was inviting friends to come over and all those things. And so conversations, some of the hardest conversations for me personally were conversations about, hey, I think we need to move our bed downstairs because our bedroom was upstairs. I think we need to move our bed downstairs. I think we need to talk about end of life decisions. I think we need to talk about our will. Like, we'd never done any of those things because we're in our 40s.
Right. Yes.
Probably should have done them, but we didn't, because most people don't.
Right.
So we needed to talk about end of life decisions. We needed to talk about the will. We needed to talk about, burial, cremation. What are your wishes? What are your desires? Like, I had to do all of that while she's in the midst of this brain disease, and the stress and the pressure and I don't want to talk about it, and don't tell people that I have CJD until we get back a test that gives us, as much certainty as we can have. I had an inner group of friends, probably 7 or 8 people that I had on a text message, and I just called them my inner circle. And they were amazing, and I would not have made it through this without them. And I would just send out requests. Hey, we need a bell so that Stacy can ring a bell. Hey, people are supposed to bring food tonight, but we don't need any more food this week. Can you call off the meal train? Like, anything. I could just put it out there, and I didn't know who was going to take care of it, but I knew that it would be taken care of. And I mentioned to this group, like, hey, I'm starting to think about hospice. I need to figure out, how do you pick this out? How do you do this? I cold called one company and talked to them, and they seemed fine.
Well,
and then one of my friends in that inner circle responded and said, hey, there's somebody that goes to our church that actually is a social worker for a hospice organization. Can I tell them about Stacy, and would you be open to a call with them? And I said, sure, that sounds fine. So I have a phone call with this person. She knows Stacy's story. She knows about CJD. She's explaining to me through her company. She said, listen, there's no expectation they have to work with us. I'm just sharing what I know. She said, but here, if you do decide to work with our hospice, I do want to let you know that I know exactly the nurse that we would have assigned to your case. I would make sure that it happens. Her name's Joanne, and her dad died from CJD.
Wow. Wow. It's such a rare disease. And when you find someone who knows what it's like, I'm getting goosebumps. Like,
yeah,
that feels like it was meant to happen.
Yeah. Her dad had died from CJD 20 years ago, and she's a hospice nurse. And so it's like, okay, decision made. I don't need Yelp. I know who's going to be with us all the way to the end in this journey. And so from there, we started hospice right at the very beginning of December. So she was in hospice care in home for about 4 weeks. Because of the progression of CJD and how quickly it goes, they were like, yeah, we'll just go ahead and plan on daily visits. If you don't want to visit, just call us off. But otherwise, Joanne will be here Monday through Friday, and we'll have substitutes in on the weekends. And here's the phone number, and here's medicines that you might need in an emergency. And they just kind of walked us through everything. And it was incredible. The other person worth mentioning is my sister-in-law, Stephanie. She lives in Denver with Stacy's brother, and she is a physical therapy assistant. And as soon as all of this became real, she said, hey, Adam, if it comes time and you want it, I will take a leave of absence from work, and I will come stay with you guys as long as you need me. And so she actually came out at Thanksgiving and stayed with us all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And there's literally no way. There's no way I could have done it, because it's 24-hour care. It's literally sleeping by their side. It's And as she lost more and more function and ability, it's literally providing every care and need for this person. And it's impossible for any one person to be able to handle that. And so Stephanie came in and was with us, even throughout having hospice, right? Even with hospice, they're not there all day, every day.
I think that's a misnomer. I think people think that hospice comes in and cares for your person. No, they come in and they teach you how to care for them.
That's right.
And then if you want private duty care, that's out of pocket often unless you have the right insurance policy. Well, so that's a part of your story that I'm just learning right now for the first time. And I can tell you from my experience, being a PT and being familiar with this disease, when I knew my loved one was going through this, it was like, all right, I wasn't as dedicated as your sister-in-law. I still had children and work obligations I would come home for, but on a dime, half my life was spent in Kansas.
Yeah.
And I don't live there now. That's where I'm from. But the other half of my life was here in Illinois, and trying to straddle that was really challenging. But at the same time, it's like I came home and I had a break.
Yeah,
but also when I would come home, I didn't no longer had that community, because when you're caring for someone like that, it's all hands on deck. You have people bringing you food, you have people caring for you.
Yeah.
And there was a disconnect in support when I came home. And that was hard too.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think the feeling I had during that time, I think is part of the reason I want to spread the awareness, because it became very clear to me that people had no idea.
Yeah.
Going through. And right. And so it sounds like you had a wonderful community. It also sounds like you were on calls 24 hours a day. And yes, 6 weeks, that's manageable, but it's also traumatic and exhausting and emotional. And to be caring for your wife at that time while also navigating raising children together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
How do kids manage that time?
Yeah. 84 days from the tingling fingers until she died, 48 days from the MRI and the ER until she died. And so really that 48 days was just like the most intense everything. Providing care for Stacy, communicating about meal trains, being the gatekeeper of who does and doesn't get to visit. And especially as we got closer to the end, that became harder because it involves saying no to more people. Like, she's got limited time and energy. I just can't, and it's not just about her, it's about me too. It's about the kids. I made a mistake is maybe too strong, but when Thanksgiving came, it was 2 weeks after the MRI. And we just kind of said to all of our family, like, I've got 2 sets of parents, Stacy's parents, her brother, my brother, we had 25 people in the house, and it was awful. I mean, I know that people are there and they wanted to enjoy the moment, and we all wanted to be together. And in some ways, I'm really glad that we did. That was really truly the last holiday we were able to have with Stacy. And one of my kids, came to me afterwards and said, "Can we never do that again? That was too much. There were too many people." And he and I, even that day, we had we escaped. We went upstairs and just laid in the bed and stared at a wall, because it's just so much overwhelm. And then you're making medical decisions in the midst of all of that with hospice visiting, and you're making the decisions of end of life care, and we're creating a will and all these documents, but she has to sign them. And so now I'm communicating with people of hey, can you come to our house and have her sign? And we need witnesses. And I'm just coordinating all these things. And it's just I don't know that I could have been more prepared for this, but I wish I was, but I know that I couldn't have been.
Give yourself grace, for sure. Give yourself grace.
Yeah. And I really don't feel like I've beaten myself up. I know that it's tempting. And I know that there's some people who maybe haven't been able to have that grace for themselves. But from the very beginning, for me, I was okay, this is the story I've been given. I just have to find my way through. Not put my head down and just plow through, but I'm not really going to spend any time asking why, because I'm not going to get a satisfying answer. And I'm not going to really think about what this means for a year down the road, or 5 years, or 10 years down the road. I really really know that the best thing for me right now is to just really focus on this hour and this day. And that still is true now, even in this grief journey. The time scales may shift here and there, but in the midst of the disease and watching her decline, it really was, okay, what do we collectively need right now in this hour? Sometimes that meant, hey, Steph, I'm going to sleep upstairs. Can you sleep on the couch tonight? Or her saying, hey, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. You have to go upstairs and sleep so you can get a full night's sleep. Or, hey, we've got a couple friends coming over. Why don't you go out to eat? Or why don't you take the kids and do this? Like, just finding ways to catch your breath. And it doesn't fix anything, and it doesn't resolve anything, and it doesn't make the pain or the anguish any less real. But it helps you remember that you're still a human in the midst of all of that stuff. And I think that's the thing that I'm grateful that I was able to do in whatever ways I was able to do, of like not just treat it as like I'm a robot and I need to do these things, but like even if it didn't make the experience any quote unquote better, I'm still going to go do these things that I think are probably good for me in the long run. My future self might thank me for these. So I'm gonna take the breaks, and I'm gonna invite people to come and hang Christmas lights outside. Like, that takes some humility for friends to be like, hey, can we come up, put Christmas lights on your house? Well, we don't need that. We don't, like, that doesn't have to happen. If we don't have lights up for Christmas, the world will not end. And it's a way that you can love us. And okay, yes, you can come do that.
To not ask for help, but to allow the help to be offered, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, that takes some, and I think most people have a hard time asking for help, but this is like all hands on deck situation.
Yeah.
All hands on. Yeah. So, you have a profession prior to knowing that this was your story. You had a profession of helping people deal with their emotional self.
Yeah.
And I think you described your job as helping people with emotional intelligence. Is that how you want me to describe it? Yeah. How do you think that background propped you and your family up during this time?
I like that question because I've been thinking about this recently. Is that I think there's a difference between making sense of something and making meaning of something. Like, I don't know how to make sense of what we've gone through. Like, in some ways, you can't fully tie it up and put a bow on it and say, oh, again, it comes back to that why question. Why did this happen? And in the coaching world, as a professional coach, I avoid asking why questions because usually it makes people feel defensive. They have to justify themselves. They're searching for something that's just intangible and you can't get. So, like, instead of trying to make sense of what we've gone through, I do try to make meaning out of what we've gone through. And, as an emotional intelligence coach, as someone who talks and teaches and trains and encourages people to think about things like optimism and a positive mindset and empathy, like 100%. 10 years ago, Adam would not have been able to say to my kids, man, I don't know what you guys are feeling right now, but whatever it is, it's totally normal. Like, if you feel rage, if you feel despair, if you feel sad, if you feel lonely, if you feel numb, like, all of that is a totally natural human response. And it's okay. It's okay to feel whatever you feel. I'm really grateful. I don't think that I became a coach, and I don't think that there's some grand, I personally don't think there's some grand plan of like, oh, Adam's going to become an emotional intelligence coach and he's going to get a certification in brain-based coaching and he's going to really understand different things about. I don't think all of that happened because my wife was going to get sick. Like, I just don't think there's that much meaning and purpose in everything. But I do look back and I go, okay, I did have those skills. I did have that experience. I did have that training. And it served me to be able to say, I'm not going to ask the why question. I'm going to come to my kids and I'm not going to try and cheer them up. I'm not going to say, hey guys, it's going to be okay. Because it's not going to be okay. Mom's dying. There's no way I can soften the blow of that. And so, yeah, my career, my experience, my skills, 100% helped me navigate all of it. And at the same time, I've said to my therapist many times in the last 9 months, sometimes I wish I wasn't quite so aware and capable. Like, sometimes I wish I could just not not have tools to try to navigate this so skillfully. Sometimes I wish I could just be a puddle. And what she says is, oh, but you can be. You can still be a puddle. Like just because you know how to navigate a hard thing in a way that maybe some other people don't, doesn't raise the bar and doesn't mean that you shouldn't still experience suffering and sorrow and deep grief. Maybe you have more capacity to hold on to gratitude, but it doesn't mean that you have a higher expectation to bypass the suffering and the loss. And so I'm really grateful for therapy. And I worked with a grief coach too, in addition to my therapist. My grief coach has lost their spouse before to cancer, and so being able to walk through with someone skillful who knows the experience hand in hand was really powerful. And again, if I wasn't a coach, I don't know that I would have even been aware of a thing such as a grief coach. But for me, I've kind of just taken all the tools that I know of, and I've sought out people who know them too, and I just try to build a community around me and my kids that says, hey, humans are messy, complicated, emotional creatures who happen to also be rational. But going
Sometimes.
through, yeah, sometimes. But just because we can be rational and just because we can problem solve and we can come up with theories doesn't mean that we can solve our way out of this. We're going to have to experience our way through this.
So here we are. Tomorrow's is it 9 months tomorrow or 10?
Yeah. Yeah. Tomorrow will be 9 months since we lost her.
And it sounds like you've created a wonderful community to support you and the family.
Yeah.
And part of me wants to ask how the kids are doing, but I also want to respect that this is their journey. And there's no doubt in my mind that you are supporting them the best way you know how. And I think that is a beautiful thing because that's a heavy weight for them. And I personally am grateful that you were there to support them during this. Cause, part of your story that breaks my heart is that, Stacy left these 3 beautiful boys. And, as a boy mom, that hits home. That hits home,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I appreciate the sensitivity around that. When I went back to work, I was working full time for an HR tech startup. When I went back to work about a little over a month after we had a service for Stacy, so in February, I had amazing coworkers. I had one coworker in particular who had lost her husband 4 years prior. So I hate that we have that shared experience, but we were the best of friends before, and now even more so. I went to my coworkers, I went to my team members, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm coming back to work. There's 2 questions that I really just don't want people to ask me. One is, how are you doing?" And that's pretty standard. Most grieving people don't know how to answer that, don't want to answer that. It's just a giant, it's impossible. And the second question I don't want people to ask me is, how are the kids doing? And it was because I don't know how to answer it. I mean, it's similar in the first question, but it's essentially like, I don't really know. Like at the time, 10, 13, 16, like I know how they're acting, I know how they're behaving, but I don't know how they're doing really, because I can ask questions and we can look at pictures and we can remember mom, and we've got all these beautiful things from the service to help us sort of remember how loved she was and how much the people care about us. But at the end of the day, like, you think a 10-year-old has enough self-awareness to be able to process all of this? Like an 11-year-old, a 14 or a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, like whatever. I mean, I'm 43, right? And I still don't fully know how to answer the question, how am I doing? So with my kids, like, yes, I want to protect them. I want them to be able to tell their own story. And it's just not a fair question because they're at some level, they're not capable of really absorbing all of this. It's something they will have to integrate and navigate forever. And with all that being said, we were really fortunate that a local church here had a 9-week program called Shift, and it was specifically for kids who had lost a loved one. And essentially, you come together for a couple hours once a week. You sit down with other kids in your age and gender group, and you learn about what grief is and what's normal, and you're given a sense of hope, and you do activities to remember your loved one. And so that was one of the things that, a couple months after the service, I was like, hey guys, like, I know that you don't want to do this. I know that there's no way you would like actively opt in to doing this, but I really think you need to. That's really
Pull
the
the
only
dad card. You're going to do it.
yeah, that's really the only thing I've forced them to do in terms of processing and grieving. Hey, I just want you guys to have some sense that like what you're experiencing is normal. Other kids are going through this too, and there are a lot of adults in this community who really care about you and want to make sure that you know that. So I was really grateful for them to have that.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get that information from you to put that in the show notes in case anyone listening in your area is interested in getting that support because, you know, I've said for a while, I've worked in healthcare and I've been exposed to more grief, I think, because of my job than the average person. But I've said for a long time that grief is the worst. That grief is, part of my language, grief is a bitch.
Yeah,
And you never know when that bitch is going to come back up and bite you.
absolutely.
Because a true grief like this, it lasts a lifetime. It does. And some days are better than others. But I suspect some of the milestone moments, and I know that people who have had loss, I know that some of those milestone moments that are going to come up that are beautiful days are still going to have some heaviness to them because Stacey won't be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've gone through most of the firsts at this point, being 9 months in. That being said, the October through January gauntlet still awaits us, reliving all of the milestones from a year ago. We've gone through the birthdays, we've gone through the anniversaries. My birthday has been the hardest day for me so far. Our anniversary was hard. Her birthday was hard. The kids' birthdays were hard, but my birthday was, I maybe it's because I wasn't expecting it, but I woke up that morning and I was just a mess the entire day. Like I just felt her absence so much on that day. And it was right about that point where you start to go, okay, I think I figured out how to navigate this grief thing. It's been 4 months. I think I figured this out. Which is silly. No, you haven't. No, you haven't.
I think it's a form of survival mode,
Sure.
you tell yourself you're doing fine. And it's a certain, and you definitely were. All
Sure.
things can.
Yeah.
And, I am about 2 years out from my journey of walking someone through the CJD process. And I do believe, I don't know, I feel like I'm entering that time because things started in September.
Yeah.
She was gone by, anyways, it was quick. And I think because it's so quick that time of year rolls around and I just automatically gravitate towards thinking about what was happening, and so even though it's been 2 years, you still process it and kind of make those dates stick in your mind. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I suspect that each year that goes by, I'm hoping that it'll fade to a certain extent, but in some ways, it's almost like I don't want it to fade because I want to still hold on.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is something comforting about there. There are for sure days that I've experienced, even in the last week, where I have just there's a term that I picked up somewhere along the way. I've had a heart spur. It's like just those little quick jabs in your heart where you feel that sense of grief or loss. And just the tears start flowing and I start crying and I feel sadness. And it's so strange to feel a sense of gratitude when those moments happen. It's not like, oh, this is great. I love this. It's sad and it's hard. And there's also that sense of, okay, good. I haven't forgotten. Like I do still love her and I still do miss her. And this did mean something to me. And I haven't just like figured out how to just numb my way through all of this. Like there is something comforting about having moments where I break down.
Yeah. Yeah. Every now and then I still do. The person that I lost was not a part of my everyday life. So I do think there's a little bit of denial that goes into that. Like
Sure.
I still catch myself going, I cannot believe she's gone. I can't believe it. Like that denial. So I want to just honor that is a very different experience. We've been through something similar, but every time someone goes through something like this, it's an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which is why going to things like the CJD conference are so powerful, or being part of some of the online support groups, is you get to hear those stories, which gives you a sense of connection. There's a universality to it, but also a reminder of how individual and specific it is. And I'm looking forward to that again. I'll be in Denver in a couple of weeks for the annual Strides for CJD walk. They do these walks all over the country. They don't have one in Indiana yet. My friends told me I wasn't allowed to start one yet.
Good
Which is
friends. I'm proud of them.
probably smart. But with Stacy's brother living in Denver, they have one. And so I said, hey, we're going to raise money. We're going to go to Denver. We're going to do this walk with them. Our community, again, showed up in an incredible way. We've raised $10,000, which is insane. And like 7,000 of that was like in the first week. It was just crazy. But again, I think it reflects just how beautiful Stacy was, how much love she gave to other people, how much she meant to other people, and then also just how much we matter to people as well. They want us to know. And every step of that walk and every dollar given, like, is it's an investment in hope that we're going to find treatment and we're going to find a cure. And there's a lot of things in the news these days, science, tech company news, that's actually pretty hope giving. That's pretty, dare I say, promising. Huntington's disease is a different disease, but there's a lot of overlap and similarity in terms of how it shows up and how it affects people. And there was just a new study that came out and said there was this massive breakthrough on slowing down and extending out quality of life and things like this. So all that to say is that, like, that's part of the meaning making for me, right? I can't make sense of it all, but I can make meaning of it. And part of the meaning is joining in the fight, joining in the efforts, joining in the raising of funds and awareness so that we can figure this out. And I'm really hopeful that we can in my lifetime.
And I'm super excited for the next segment. I don't know if I shared with you, but Sonia is going to come and share some of her story and share some of the science that she's created to give people like you and I hope.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so I'm excited for everyone to hear her story too. And what a beautiful way to honor Stacy, because she was a runner. And so to do Strides, I think that's such a beautiful way to honor her. And I want to make sure to get that information in the show notes. I suspect that Strides will happen before this episode goes live, but I don't think anyone will ever not accept a donation.
That's right. That's right.
So we'll put that information there as well. So as we're looking towards close out the conversation, I guess the last question I had planned, or one of many questions I had planned, but I think this is so important to ask is, we have people listening, and some of the people listening are going to be listening because we share this to the CJD group. Something that I like about the Facebook group, being a part of that now, is being able to give people advice when they're in that hands-on deck. How do I do this? What do I do? And I try to give tailored advice, but basically I'm like, you need help, you need support, get people in there right now. So that is the advice I like to make sure that people have. Is there anything you think that if the audience needs to hear, if they know someone going through this, how can they better help support their loved ones?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things that come to mind. I haven't really processed this part of the journey, and I haven't written about this yet either. That's one of the ways that I'm processing all of this, is just writing. One incredibly practical thing that maybe feels a little bit crass, but I just think it's important, is that, if you suspect something like this could be part of your family, then you should go get life insurance. That's a huge part of it. And I'm really grateful that we had already, because Stacy worked in banks and financial planning industries, we already had those things squared away years and years ago. And so that took off a lot of stress and pressure for me as I took over managing all the things, which I'm capable of, but I just, it took a lot of the logistics and the planning and the figuring out, and how do I get this, and do we have that? And for me to be able to even step away from my job and say, listen, I can't do that job anymore because I just don't care. It's just not important enough anymore. Having a safety net for that was huge, was critical. Related to that is that, Stacy contributed to Social Security for all of her working life. And so I didn't know this until after she died, but I've got 3 minors. I've got 3 kids who are able to claim Social Security survivor benefits. And so they are each able to claim, until they turn 18, a monthly withdrawal on Stacy's Social Security. So again, just another take some stress away, helps pave a path, helps us get through hard times or anticipate college or whatever, on a much more just emotional, practical, human, going through these kinds of things level. I mean, I guess it would just be to reiterate, is finding out who that inner circle is, have them, and tell them exactly how this is going to work. Find that group of people and say, listen, I need to be able to just dump my needs and my wants and my frustrations and everything in this pile here. And then I'm going to trust you all to figure out what to do with it. There's so many things. And I someday maybe I'll go back and look through that text thread and just realize how much they truly did for me. But without that, me being a successful, responsible, motivated, high-performing adult, probably would, without that group, I probably would have thought, okay, it's up to me. I have to figure this out. Like, that's part of my neuroses, is that sort of independence, self-reliance. I can't ask people. I don't want to ask people to do too much. But for whatever reason, I was really capable of going to that group of friends and saying, I just need you to take care of this stuff, or I just need you to listen, or I just need somebody to come over. Like, I just can't fathom getting through this without those friends. There's just no way.
What a blessing, but also what a testament to the life that you and Stacy created.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for holding the space. I'm still learning how to tell the story, so it's helpful to remember all that we've gone through, because on the hard days, it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, this is hard for a reason. And I'm grateful for you and the friendship that we've formed and the work that you're doing too, to just create awareness. And yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it takes such incredible strength for you to revisit these painful memories. And I'm deeply grateful that you were willing to open up your heart, not just for you and your family, but for everyone listening who has been touched by CJD, or like you said, this is it's in a category of diseases that I think anyone going through something like this, Huntington's, MSA, those types of diseases, it is hard and all hands on deck. So you are, I think, also helping spread the awareness. But I want to make sure to honor the fact that there's no doubt in my mind that your wife's life and her legacy are living through you and your kids. And I hope that bringing her story into this space allows others to walk away with more understanding, more empathy, and more awareness. So as we close, I just want to honor her memory. I want to honor your family's resilience and the love that continues even in such a loss. Thank you again for trusting us with this conversation. So as we take a moment to reflect on what we've just heard, I encourage you to sit with the weight of this story. Maybe picture sitting in the grief for a moment, because when we acknowledge grief, when we intentionally acknowledge grief, I do think it is helpful with the processing of it. And I want you to sit with the love and the resilience that shines through this hard story. We're going to continue our conversation with Sonia, who has dedicated her life to saving her life and others through science, in just a moment. But first, let's pause, take a moment to honor the families and individuals that have been touched by CJD. As we close out this conversation, I want to return to a few moments that have stayed with me long after Adam and I stopped recording this interview, which actually took place several months ago. Adam shared that his relationship with Stacy began not with text or DMs, but with handwritten letters. Two people taking the time to slow down, to choose their words carefully, and to build something meaningful across distance. And together, they built a life that included 3 incredible boys, now 17, 14, and 11, each carrying forward their own relationship with their mom and their own individual grief. One of the things Adam spoke about so beautifully was learning to let go of the why questions. How asking why so often brings defensiveness or
or sends us searching for answers that just simply don't exist. But instead, he's chosen presence over explanation, meaning over sense-making. I think there's something profoundly wise in that. He also gave language to something many of us feel but struggle to name, those sudden moments of grief that he referred to as heart spurs, those sharp, unexpected reminders of love and loss that catch you off guard. Moments that hurt and yet somehow reassure you that you still remember, that that love is still alive. Adam reminded us that grief is universal but never generic. It looks different in every body, every family, and each season. And even for someone who teaches emotional intelligence for a living, this journey has required him to resist his instinct towards hyper-independence, to allow help in, to be held by community, to soften instead of powering through. There's one thing I hope you take away from this episode. It's this: grief is not something to solve. It's something to experience, and no two people will ever experience it the same way. In our next episode, we will continue this conversation by shifting into the science, exploring the work being done to understand, treat, and one day cure prion diseases like CJD. But before we do that, I want another pause. Wherever you are listening, if you can close your eyes and take a moment, let's stop. Let's take a collective breath. Very good. Stay with that. Stay with that breathing, because I want to take a moment, take a breath to honor Stacy, to honor Adam and his boys. I want to take a moment to honor my friend's mom, who was so formative in my life, someone I lovingly referred to as Aunt Susie. And to honor your own story, whatever loss, love, or healing you may be carrying. Sitting with it can be uncomfortable, but I've learned that through great discomfort comes great change. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for bearing witness to these stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of the healing journey.
Thanks for listening to The Healing Journey with your host, Dr. Kate Olin. We hope you enjoyed the experience. Please make sure to follow the show so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next time, don't forget to take care of yourself.